expensive. And then the threat of a global recession. President Bongbong Marcos will hit the ground running in addressing these issues that are now affecting ordinary households. All need immediate attention. But what poses the biggest challenge?
Our agriculture is in crisis.
Food security is a concern of every Filipino, and Mr. Marcos has decided to take on the agriculture portfolio instead of appointing someone to do this difficult job. U.S.-based investment advisor Global Source Partners believes that's a bold move, as the president has the political capital to convince Congress, with his allies in the supermajority, to push for agricultural reforms. But by not providing a person he can fire if things go south, his decision could also be his first fumble. Comments from experts have a common theme. Taming food and fuel prices should be the economic team's first order of business. London-based think tank Capital Economics already revised interest rate hike forecasts to bring the Bangko Central's benchmark rate to 3.5% by year-end. That's to control rising consumer prices. It expects inflation to peak soon.
As long as the government lets the central bank do its work, then eventually inflation will fall out. But it is a big concern and a big challenge at the moment.
The fact that the Marcos economic team has been consistent with its remarks comforts investors. The research unit of global debt watcher Fitch Ratings says Philippine debt might have seen its worst. It's confident the new administration can get the fiscal house in order.
And if you look at some of the other metrics which you'd use to measure the health of a country's public finances in terms of the share of government spending that is used to pay off debt, interest rates, they're all quite low. And so we're not at the moment concerned about public.
Marcos wants to narrow the budget deficit to just 3% by the end of his term in 2028.
Focus should be on tax administration first. The way to outgrow this the high debt to GDP ratio, although our debt to GDP ratio is fairly manageable. I think globally the debt to GDP ratio is nearing around 300%. Ours is only 60%. But the way to outgrow it is by focusing on economic growth.
But what do those pronouncements mean for you and me? The economic team is pulling many levers, while there's monetary tightening on one side, which makes paying car and home loans a real pain. There's expansionary fiscal spending, but targeted at those who are hurting the most from expensive foods and fuel.
Marcos, concurrently serving as Agriculture Secretary, sends a strong signal that despite the belt tightening, there will be more funds to address the food crisis. Lois Calderon, CNN, Philippines.
The local currency sunk to 56 pesos and 37 centavos today, the weakest since November 2004. The lowest the peso has ever been was in October 2004 at 56 pesos and 44 centavos. Now, as the country marks the 6th anniversary of the historic arbitral ruling on the West Philippine Sea, more Filipinos are optimistic that the Marcos administration will do better in asserting the rights of the country. Several nations also express hope the change of leadership will lead to strategic partnerships based on the rule of law. Tristan Odalo reports.
The Philippine government rejects any attempt to undermine the 2016 arbitral ruling, insisting that the findings of the historic decision are final, conclusive, and indisputable. Foreign Affairs Secretary Enrique Manalo says that the arbitral award already refutes claims based on historic rights in the South China Sea. The DFA chief adds that the ruling also upheld the Philippines' sovereign rights and jurisdiction in its exclusive economic zone. The DFA also welcomes the growing number of nations supporting the arbitral award, which is now part of international law. Meantime, longtime military ally the United States says it stands with the Philippines in upholding the arbitral award. The U.S. adds that the ruling is final and binding and that China should respect the international law. The U.S. adds that any attack on Philippine armed forces or public vessels will invoke the Mutual Defense Treaty.
We remain optimistic that the best way forward is still diplomacy. Nevertheless, we are prepared to deter or deter aggression.
Apart from the US, the United Kingdom, Australia, Japan, and the European Union also expressed support for the Philippines in asserting the arbitral award.
the European Union aims to contribute to the stability, security, and prosperity of the Indo-Pacific region, while promoting democracy, the rule of law, human rights, and international law.
In a Pulse Asia survey commissioned by the Strat-based ADR Institute last June, majority of Filipinos want the Marcos administration to assert our rights in the West Philippine Sea.
Ang nais ng sambayan ng Pilipino ay manindigan ang bagong pamahalaan, panindigan ng ating what we won 6 years ago na may siguro lumalabas may pagkukulang ang previous government.
China repeatedly insists that the arbitral award is illegal and therefore null and void, and that the tension in the South China Sea is just a fraction of the overall Philippine-Chinese relations. Tristan Odalo, CNN Philippines.
Fishermen are also stepping forward, telling the government to uphold the country's rights in the West Philippine Sea. Fisherfolk group Pamalakaya staged protests aboard their boats at the Laguna de Bay and Manila Bay. Pamalakaya wants the Marcos administration to assert the Hague ruling to defend the country's, quote, national sovereignty and territorial waters. President Marcos has said he would not compromise the country's sovereignty in any way. In Japan, crowds gather on the streets in the capital, Tokyo, to pay their last respects to former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. The hearse carrying Abe's remains left the centuries-old Zojoji Temple, where a private funeral service was held for family and close friends. Abe's remains traveled from the temple to the Kirigaya Funeral Hall for cremation. The former Japanese leader was assassinated while giving a speech in the city of Nara on Friday. Back here at home, you can still fold a new 1,000 peso bill despite viral posts saying otherwise. The Bangko Sentral reminds retailers and banks to keep accepting folded banknotes, whether polymer or paper, for payment. This after a netizen claimed that a mall refused to accept her folded 1,000 peso bill. In a statement, SM Supermalls denied this, telling the public that folded banknotes are still accepted in its stores, except those that are mutilated, stapled, and ripped from the removal of staple wire. More stories ahead. A sneak peek at a stunning view of the early universe in a first-of-its-kind image from NASA. And in sports, one more match for the Philippine women's football team as they go for a sweep in the group stage of the AFF Women's Championship. You're watching Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.
SMC, San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement, gama sa Davao para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement, ato ni bay. SMC, San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement, gama sa Davao para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement, ato ni bay.
Ito ang RPN, Radio Philippines Network, DXKT 1071 sa inyong mga radyo, ang Radyo Ronda sa Davao.
You're watching Newsnight. In football. Can the Philippines cap off the group round of the AFF Women's Championship with a flawless record? For their last Group A match, the Filipinos are facing powerhouse Thailand later at 7 p.m. at the Rizal Memorial Stadium in Manila. The Philippine team will work to avenge its loss to the squad in the Southeast Asian Games back in May. Filipinas already secured a semifinals ticket for the AFF tournament after 4 wins. From sports to infinity and beyond, the first full-color image from the largest space telescope in history is here. U.S. President Joe Biden released this photograph from NASA's James Webb Telescope during a preview event at the White House. This is the deepest picture of the universe and is the telescope's first deep-field view of incredibly old and distant galaxies, some of them never before seen. Moving on to entertainment, members of the Pinoy pop sensation Beanie have been busy recently dropping the music video for their chart-topping song, Lagi, and preparing for the Tugatog Pinoy Music Festival on July 15th. Amid their success, the 8-piece ensemble tells CNN Philippines their flawless group dynamic was not an overnight success.
From different parts of the Philippines po, may taga Cebu, Bohol, Nueva Vizcaya, Isabela, everywhere po. So, parang lumaki po kami with different beliefs po, perspective, and life. So, nung nagkita-kita po kami at first, hindi po kami naging okay kasi syempre, iba-iba po kami ng kinalakihan. Ngayon po na magkakasama na po kami for almost 3 years na. 3 years na and counting. So, mas nabibuild na po yung chemistry namin sa isa't isa.
This one's for fans of the popular American reality show RuPaul's Drag Race. Actor Paolo Ballesteros will host the local adaptation Drag Race Philippines. The show begins streaming August 17th. From drag queens to pageant queens, the country is among the top 3 in the Miss Supranational Talent Competition alongside India and Japan. Philippine vet Alison Black presented a stunning ballet piece for her entry. Find out if Alison is bringing home the crown from Poland with the Miss Supranational pageant airing here on CNN Philippines this Saturday, July 16 at 12 noon. And stay tuned for Mr. Supranational showing the next day. And that is it for now. Join me again on News.ph at 7 p.m. I'm Pia HONTIVEROS for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.
Ito ang
RPN Radio Philippines Network, Radyo Ronda, DXKT Davao, member kapisanan ng mga broadcaster ng Pilipinas.
The future of the pandemic is looking a bit clearer. For many, this means it's time to start the family they may have been delaying. In fact, some experts predict a baby boom on the way. But from morning sickness to adopting a nutritious diet, pregnancy can be overwhelming, especially for new moms. So in the program today, we'll walk you through what to expect when you're expecting. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez and welcome to MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines. The key to a strong baby is a healthy pregnancy. Our guests are here today to tell us more about this. With us is Dr. Maria Linda Quevedo. She's an OB-gynecologist from the Asian Hospital and Medical Center and the head of maternal fetal medicine. We're also joined by Ms. Alodia Mercado, who is a clinical psychologist from AMAC Psychological Services. Thank you both for joining us on this program today. Now, whether you're having your first, second, or even third child, deciding to have a baby is a very big step for any family. Now, Ms. D, what are some factors to consider kaya before deciding that a baby is going to be added to that family? What are some of the emotions that first-time parents would normally feel at this moment?
Hindi nakakagulat that women's preconception desire of conceiving a child is very linked to their values, to their goals, or employment, financial and emotional circumstances, no? And of course, the kind of preference of their partner has. All of this have to come on a first issue of pregnancy. It is very important na handa ang isang babae bago siya magbuntis.
Is there a point where someone can really say, you know what, ready na ako to have a baby?
Sociologically speaking, there is no exact time or date, no, kung kailan tayo talagang sobrang ready when it comes to pregnancy. Napakahalaga na mai-posisyon natin yung isang taong magbubuntis doon sa kapasidad niya to develop a fetus inside her womb. Like physically, no, ready ba yung katawan niya? Meron ba siyang condition emotionally that she has to actually deal with before getting pregnant?
So let's talk about that naman, the physical readiness ng isang babae to have a baby, because having a baby changes a lot of things, not just for the woman involved, but for the couple. So having a healthy pregnancy begins even before you get pregnant. For one, you need to understand your fertility as well as your ovulation cycles. Now, Dr. Quevedo, let's discuss that. Why should expecting moms track their fertility?
Yes, assuming they have a menstrual cycle, we all know that peak fertility for every woman would be about 20 to 24 weeks age of gestation. So by the time the woman reaches 40, sometimes fertility drops as much as 95%. And like Ms. D said, nowadays, women have the option now to delay reproduction. Normally, a couple with unprotected coitus for 1 year should get pregnant. And particularly for women beyond 35 weeks age of gestation, if they have unprotected coitus for more than 6 months and nothing happens, again, this is the time to refer to your favorite reproductive endocrinologist.
Dr. Quevedo, you bring up a good point. You mentioned how if in 6 months there's unprotected coitus and they're trying to have a baby, hindi nangyayari. One of those factors was stress. Stress at work, stress at home. How big of a factor can stress influence the fertility of a woman?
I cannot give you a ballpark figure on this, but definitely it factors in greatly in the ovulatory cycle of a woman.
Now, Dr. D, let's talk about stress for that matter. It's really popular, especially here in the culture here in the Philippines, na kapag may bagong kasal, they expect na may baby soon after. Maybe a year, maybe 2 years after kasal, may baby na. Does this put some undue stress on the mother or on the couple, leading to even more difficulty in trying to conceive?
Yes, Doc Freddy, no, napaka-importante ng role of stress and stressors sa kapasidad ng isang babae to conceive a baby, no? And these pressures going on in the environment of a couple or from an individual just like a woman is actually making an increase in the release of cortisol level or these hormones. This actually is a very great factor or an important factor in one's capacity to produce a baby, Doc Freddy.
I'd like to ask Dr. Quevedo, so once the woman is now pregnant or she has conceived the baby, how soon should she get her body ready in terms of nutrition?
Well, actually, preparation for pregnancy should be starting in the preconception period. No? It is best that the woman is in prime condition before she attempts to get pregnant. This would lower the risk for complications for both the mother and the developing fetus. And she would be psychologically prepared for pregnancy. So, prior to getting pregnant, as much as possible, she should reach ideal body weight and she should already be properly immunized. No? Of course, the woman also, if she has medical conditions, this should be addressed and stabilized prior to being pregnant. And she should already start with her supplements such as her folic acid, which is imperative for the development of normal central nervous system for the developing fetus.
That's true, Dr. Quevedo. But despite following all of that and trying their best to be physically prepared, sometimes complications can't be avoided or prevented during pregnancy. When we return, what to do if they arise. We're your partner in healthcare. This is MedTalk Health Talk.
SMC, San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement, gama sa Davao para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement, ato ni Bay.
Ito ang RBN, Radio Philippines Network, DXKT 1071 sa inyong mga radyo, ang Radyo Ronda sa Davao.
Today, we're talking about steps for a healthy pregnancy and a healthy baby-to-be. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and welcome back to MedTalk Health Talk. A common condition that affects a lot of pregnant women is morning sickness. Now, this usually occurs within the first few months of pregnancy or may progress further. And although it's called morning sickness, it can happen at any time of the day. Dr. Quevedo, why does this happen? What should a first-time mom expect?
Well, you call this hyperemesis gravidarum, no? It may be so bad that the patient may need hospitalization for rehydration. We would advise these women to avoid taking 3 full meals but having small, frequent feedings.
A follow-up question to that. With many bodily changes, a woman who is preparing for a baby sometimes often reports that their sense of smell heightens. Why does this occur naman?
It is because of the hormones of pregnancy. So we try to tell them to avoid very tasty fried foods. It's better that they take land foods, and sipping ice chips would even help.
And with that in mind, Ms. D, Dr. Quevedo mentioned that a lot of these changes that a woman carrying a baby may feel for the first time can be overwhelming because of the hormones. Gaano ka-importante that she feels na hindi lang siya yung nasa-challenge sa ganitong process?
The misery that every woman has to go through in morning sickness may cause a lot of mental and psychological conditions. No? Ilan sa mga sintomas ito yung isolation. And because of this, so isolation could be the cause to develop certain serious psychological problems related to depression. Because of this, sometimes they are confused about how their body is actually functioning during the term of pregnancy. And it is quite important that the partner is actually able to suffice the needs emotionally, no?
Now, Dr. Quevedo, let's talk about preeclampsia because it's one of the most common high-risk conditions during pregnancy. What is it? How does it happen?
Well, preeclampsia is new onset hypertension, no? What is important is we identify those women at risk for developing preeclampsia. These are women who are more than 40 years of age. This is the first-time moms, or they have multiple gestations, or they have pre-existing diabetes mellitus, and so forth and so on.
Now, I'd like to talk about, Dr. Quevedo, some of the risk factors that can influence the health of the baby, and that is cigarette smoking and alcohol drinking, for that matter. Now, how big of an impact can this have on the baby?
During the entire pregnancy and preconception, we already advise the women to stop smoking and to stop drinking alcohol. We know that taking of alcohol can give your fetal alcohol syndrome, and this will result to small babies. There may be facial deformities in the developing fetus. For smokers, likewise, you will have small babies. You may have sudden infant death syndrome. There may be fetal digital anomalies. So to avoid all this, you have to advise the women to stop smoking, and even the fathers.
Now, Dr. Quevedo, let's go back to preeclampsia because this is the most common complication here in the Philippines when it comes to moms and especially first-time moms. Is there a screening process in order to catch this early?
Well, the easiest way is to do the mean arterial pressure, no? We check if it's higher than 90, probably this woman would have preeclampsia. And there are also higher screening serum tests such as placental growth factor.
Now, Dr. Quevedo, is preeclampsia a risk greater for the mom or for the fetus?
It's about 50-50, no? If the blood pressure is not controlled, she can go into eclampsia and she could even have a cerebrovascular accident, no?
Ms. D, Dr. Quevedo brings up a good point that we're talking about all of these risk factors and they are ever present. So I'd like to talk about the extremes on this end. Those who've undergone either a miscarriage or a complication through preeclampsia where the fetus was lost. So they have so many different feelings. It not only affects the mother, but those loved ones around her. They don't know, they aren't sure on how to be supportive. So just an insight on what is okay to do. Is it okay to feel all of this stages of grief maybe?
Yeah. Yes, Doc Freddy, when it comes to losing something or someone, no, we have to undergo that stage of grief like what you said a while ago. We cannot expect a woman to automatically accept what actually happened to her. There is a process for it. So the first thing that you have to do, support for this woman, is just to listen. Let this woman express, and it is very important to process these negative thoughts. It starts with acceptance, and the acceptance actually run for around 6 months, Doc Freddy. But if the symptoms are still there, we have to accept the fact that this woman has to be referred to a professional.
Now, when we return, additional tips in order to maintain a healthy pregnancy. Your health is our mission here on MedTalk Health Talk. We'll be right back.
SMC, San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement, gama sa Davao para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement, ato ni Bay.
Ito ang RBN, Radio Philippines Network, DXKT 1071 sa inyong mga radyo, ang Radyo Ronda sa Davao.
I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and this is MedTalk Health Talk, where your care always comes first. Starting a family is one of life's greatest joys, and a healthy pregnancy means a healthy baby. But with so much information out there, it can be hard to determine the best healthcare practices. Sometimes these moms may get progressively uncomfortable, and that is only but natural. Now let's continue the discussion on how the pregnancy can be both beneficial for the mom as well as for the baby. Dr. Quevedo, we've talked about a lot of good benefits on how the new mom should prepare herself for being pregnant. Now let's talk about some of the things wherein a lot of viewers may be unsure of. One of that is exercise. Is it okay for someone who is pregnant to exercise? And if so, ano yung at one point should they lessen or even stop?
Exercise is allowable during pregnancy, particularly low-impact exercises. But there are certain conditions wherein exercise is absolutely contraindicated, such as when a woman has cardiac disease, or if she has uncontrolled preeclampsia, or if she has persistent second and third trimester bleeding.
Dr. Quevedo, how about sexual intercourse for those couples? Are there any do's and don'ts in terms of stages in the pregnancy?
Sexual intercourse is allowable so long as the woman is not in danger of having preterm delivery, nor is she bleeding.
Now, Ms. D, earlier we talked about a lot of the emotional journey that a new mother can undergo. What about the supportive partner in this situation? What kind of acknowledgement should the partner have in this, either be the husband or the life partner?
If we're talking about women who are really challenged physically and mentally during pregnancy, I would recommend light stress in their relationship. So if there are serious concerns in the family or in the partnership or in the relationship, they must be able to understand that there is actually a benefit for taking things lightly. But of course, we don't want to be toxic positive here. I would like to account the importance of communication here. It is not about what you say, but it's actually how you say those issues and concerns to the pregnant woman.
Now, Dr. Quevedo, while undergoing pregnancy, especially during the advanced weeks, the mother may feel a lot of problems when it comes to joints and pains, especially low back pain for that matter. How can these things be addressed?
Well, low back pains, of course, you have the added weight of the gravid uterus during pregnancy. There can be some belly support which are available in the market, and she should be encouraged to rest during daytime.
Dr. Quevedo, I ask this because of this follow-up question. When it comes to medications, many other doctors in different specialties are very careful in giving medications, especially to pregnant women. It always has to be cleared with the obstetrician first. So my question for you is, when it comes to pain relievers, should they hold off first and seek advice before they take any pain reliever?
Well, low back pains, you have to diagnose first what is the cause, no? She might be having premature contractions, in which case we give some uterine relaxants, and it might be caused by some medical conditions such as urinary tract infection, so we have to clear that up.
One more question with regards to that. You mentioned urinary tract infections. Do urinary tract infections, Dr. Quevedo, increase when a woman is pregnant?
We have to address if there is a urinary tract infection present, because this may become an ascending infection intrautero and may adversely affect the developing fetus. So we have to address all infections. Asymptomatic bacteriuria, which is urinary tract infection, which the mom doesn't feel anything at all, has to be checked periodically. And it's pretty common in pregnancy.
Unfortunately, that's all the time we have. But before we go, Dr. Quevedo, do you have any additional tips?
We have a lot of moms who are still undernourished. So it is imperative that you have your daily recommended allowances for your micronutrients and your macronutrients. And it would be best that if you seek a consultation with your obstetrician gynecologist to ensure a healthy baby and pregnancy.
And of course, Ms. D, before we go, any advice from you?
To all the pregnant women, seek medical support for access of correct information, extend awareness, be aware of the changes in your body, communicate how you feel with others, understand that experiencing negative emotions is part of the process, reduce unhealthy lifestyle, and of course, enrich your daily life by spicing up your routine, by creating your passion, learning new things, and of course, connecting with people.
We hope these tips help new parents and first-time pregnant moms face the changes that will be coming their way. Thank you so much, Dr. Maria Linda Quevedo and Ms. Alodia Mercado, for being with us today. Your tips and insights will definitely help a lot of our viewers in their journey towards a family. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and thank you for watching Med Talk Health Talk. We'll see you again next time.